Scott Duvall, known as Powerplex, meticulously prepares a speech for the day he finally kills Mark Grayson. He rehearses every word, ensuring that when the moment arrives, Mark will understand exactly why he must die. As he practices, his wife, Becky Duvall, watches and expresses approval, telling him she liked it. Encouraged by her support, he kisses her on the forehead before heading to the shower, his mind still fixated on his vengeance. The next day, Scott is at work when he hears troubling news. A fellow scientist at the Pentagon mentions that people are starting to suspect someone has been stealing the biotherm discs they developed. The revelation makes Scott uneasy. These advanced discs, capable of storing and redistributing body heat, were crucial to his plans. If the wrong people found out what he had been doing, everything could come crashing down before he even had the chance to face Mark. Determined to lure Mark into a confrontation, Scott stages a public scene, hoping to draw Invincible's attention. However, instead of Mark, he gets Shapesmith. The alien hero confronts him, striking first, but Scott's abilities allow him to absorb the kinetic energy from the attack and redirect it back at his opponent. Shapesmith, realizing the danger, shapeshifts into Mark's appearance and quickly escapes. Furious, Scott returns home, only to be met with anger from Becky. She demands to know why he acted so recklessly without informing her. Scott apologizes, explaining that he acted hastily because his superiors were growing suspicious of the missing biotherm discs. If he didn't act soon, he might lose his chance to perfect his control over his energy absorption powers. In the past, the energy he took in would leak uncontrollably, but with these discs, he was finally gaining mastery over his abilities. As they talk, Scott reveals the true reason for his vendetta against Mark. His sister, Jessica, had been working in an office building when Mark and his father, Nolan, clashed in a devastating battle. The destruction caused the building to collapse, killing her. Becky, although shaken, understands his pain. She loved Jessica too. Scott then makes a life-altering decision. He tells Becky he will quit his job and dedicate himself entirely to avenging Jessica's death by taking Mark down for good. Determined to escalate his efforts, Scott orchestrates another attack, this time hoping to finally face Mark directly. However, instead of Invincible, he is met by the newly resigned Guardians of the Globe. Frustrated, he demands to know where Mark is, but before he can get an answer, Rexplode throws one of his explosive batons at him. The moment it makes contact, Scott absorbs the kinetic energy and fires it back at them, growing even stronger. Robot, observing the fight, scolds Rex for making Scott more powerful. The battle is intense, but without Mark, Scott sees no point in continuing. He retreats, returning home seething with frustration. The repeated failures begin to take a toll on Scott's mental state. When he arrives home, his anger is still burning, and his demeanor frightens his young son, Jack. Realizing this, Scott immediately softens and apologizes to him. Later that night, after Becky puts Jack to bed, Scott makes his final, most drastic move yet. If he can't get Mark to come to him, he'll force his hand in the most personal way possible. Scott stages a hostage situation, using his own wife and child as bait. The plan works. Mark arrives, demanding that he let them go. But Scott doesn't plan on making this easy. Instead, he asks Mark a question. Does he even remember Jessica? Mark, confused, admits that he doesn't. Scott then tells him about her, how she was just an office assistant, working to put herself through college, completely innocent in every way. Mark, realizing the weight of what Scott is saying, genuinely apologizes. But it's not enough. Enraged, Scott attacks, firing bolts of electricity into Mark. Mark retaliates, delivering a punch, but Scott absorbs the impact and hurls the energy back at him. The battle escalates, with Scott landing devastating blows fueled by Mark's own strength. Mark sees an opening and moves toward Becky, attempting to free her, but she spits on him. Before he can react, Scott kicks him away and restrains him again. Becky watches with a twisted sense of satisfaction as Scott continues his assault, relishing in Mark's suffering. Then, Scott makes a fatal mistake. He channels an immense surge of energy, unleashing everything he has in a final attack meant to obliterate Mark. But the uncontrolled power surges beyond his limits. Becky and Jack, still within range, are caught in the blast. The devastating force incinerates them instantly. The moment Scott realizes what has happened, he drops Mark, his entire world shattering before him. His wife and child gone, their bodies reduced to nothing. A horrifying silence follows as he stares at the ashes of his own family. In the shock of the moment, his grief twists into blind rage. He refuses to take responsibility. Instead, he blames Mark. If Mark had just died like he was supposed to, this never would have happened. He screams in agony, tears streaming down his face. Mark regains consciousness, untouched by the attack. Seeing the destruction around him, he tries once again to reach Scott, to express remorse, but Scott refuses to listen. His hatred is too deep, his pain too raw. In desperation, he fires another bolt of lightning at Mark, but Mark finally understands how his powers work. Without giving him another chance to gather more energy, Mark grabs him in a crushing bear hug, forcing him to expend the last of his power. The fight is over. Scott, utterly broken, collapses, sobbing uncontrollably. Mark watches in sorrow, knowing that nothing he says will change what has happened. Scott, between ragged breaths, swears that one day, someone will slip up, someone will give him enough energy, and when that moment comes, he will finally kill Mark Grayson. And that's where we'll leave it for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Invincible, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into your favorite comics. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this chapter and what you're excited to see next. See you in the next video.